deploy cash in the market. All right. Okay. So now I have a trade idea for you, and it is very tight liquidity in this one. It is a stock that we discussed a couple of weeks ago before the market sold off, and I mentioned specifically at the time that I was hesitant to issue an official trade alert on this because the bid and ask spreads are very wide and it's going to move the stocks. So I presented a long, detailed bull case, but I did not present the trade idea. But you know what? It's still going to be difficult to get into this, but I think you should get into this before earnings that are coming out. And the stock is Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers, RBA. The trade is buy straight March. Skip February. Don't go to June. That's too far out. You can, but you don't have to. Go with straight March 30 calls. Straight March 30 calls for $2.35 or less. Straight March 30 calls for $2.35 or less. Here you go. The volume just went from 0 to 375, and you can see how the intraday stock is doing. Now, here you go. There is the intraday stock. So buy straight March 30 calls for $2.35 or less. Before we started this webinar, I was hoping that you guys would get a fill around maybe 210, but this is my problem that I usually run into. And now this thing is basically going parabolic. Well, don't be surprised as it spikes right here in front of you. A bunch of other subscription websites that have no freaking idea what's going on. They're probably talking about this. Oh my God, unusual option activity, unusual option activity. All right. Okay, so buy straight March 30 calls for $2.35 or less. And now let's dive into the technicals first, and then I will follow up with the fundamental bull case. Now, some of you may already be positioned in this because we discussed this recently a couple of weeks ago in the chat room. And I mentioned there, I was waiting for a pullback. It felt that the stock had run quite a bit coming out of this. That pullback finally came. And I think that this is a basic formation where it will take the next U-turn. And I think you're going to see the stock basically go to at least this $33 per level, which is the heavy volume of price resistance. And then I think that you're going to expect a very good quarter and very bullish commentary from the company when they're going to be presenting in a conference as well. And I think the stock has room to run all the way to mid-30s. You could see this go to $34 to $35 per share. So Ritchie Brothers Auctioneer, this is one of Avo's favorite stock as well. Who knows, he may already have a position in this one for a long time as well. All right, and Jay has also written about RBA in the past. All right, so just to cover a couple of things, just to refresh your memories real quick. RBA is a Canadian-based company, and basically this is an auctioneer of used equipment. It's an auctioneer as well as a distributor of industrial used equipment. Okay, and it does have other side businesses as well. You know, it's related to the industrial equipment. And so what do these industrial equipment essentially means? They mainly target heavy machinery as well as the use of these, as well as the equipment that is used in the trucking industry. So it's a derivative of the strong trucking market that we've been highlighting on many different stocks, such as Caterpillar, such as Cummins, such as Paccar, such as a whole bunch of other areas. So it's essentially tied to that entire strong markets in the trucking business. All right, but it does not make per se. It is an auctioneer. It's a distributor, an auctioneer of used equipment. All right. Now going back to my original research that I provided right here. This was from January 18, before the market sold off. I want to highlight a couple points from this, and then I will dive into some new research that has happened since then. This was January 2017. You can find this in Activity Tracker and a big bull case that we provided over here. Focus on the most important things that matters in this note, okay? And that's over here. Rental, truck, and construction equipment auction reported on December 17. Its monthly gross transaction value, GTV, climbed to $423 million, up huge 82% year over year. Year over year, items sold were up 28%, huge acceleration from a decline of 5% observed during the period from January through September 2017. Major acceleration. So this company was posting negative growth from all the way from January through September 2017. And then suddenly in Q4, the number of products sold went up sharply by 28% year over year in the fourth quarter, as well as the GTV, the gross transaction value, shot up by 82% year over year, much more than the number of items sold, which tells me that there was pricing power. And then here, the new channel checks were showing through the end of November. All right, so we still do not have the actually December numbers might be out now, but through the end of November, Q4 GTV was tracking up 36% year over year, well ahead of a street expectation of 17%. For December, or here you go, December is already out too. For December, reported on January 8th, GTV came in at 579 million versus 510 million estimate. Okay, and so this is significant acceleration from the first 9 months disaster in 2017 to to Q4 of 2017. Huge acceleration. It is so significant and it is so fast acceleration that it has caught a lot of analysts off guard. Now, the company did mention that there are particular reasons for this, and some of this is mentioned in the side note over here, because RBA acquired Iron Planet, okay, which was recently closed. Iron Planet is another auction house, right? And so originally they were not able to monetize this as expected, but then gradually it started to, the company basically gave the company a huge boon to when the trucking orders started to basically rebound. This acquisition was done just in time. Perfect acquisition done just in time, and you started to see basically a big move higher. As the orders in the trucking business started to rebound. So there's a particular reason for that. So the acquisition is now worth it. Now it should be everything. But here's the most important thing. This acceleration that you have seen in Q4 is so sharp that it has caught the analyst community completely off the mark, and they're perplexed whether it is even sustainable. And I think that's precisely where resides the opportunity, because everyone, if you look at the consensus estimates, you'll see that everybody's afraid or reluctant to move their forward earnings estimates higher ahead of earnings, because they want to see enough evidence whether this was not a one-off quarter and this kind of strong growth will continue. And I think that once the company announces earnings and makes this presentation in a very large conference that they're doing in Orlando pretty soon, all right, you could see the analyst community then come to its notes and say, okay, you know what, this is going to stick. We now see a brighter future for fiscal year 2018, and you could see series of price hikes and series of forward earnings estimates will then start to move higher. I want you to be positioned in call options ahead of that, before the analyst community start to warm up to this name. To show you how the consensus is thinking, I can show multiple research notes, but Bank of America has done a pretty good job in this one already. So let's just take a look at that. I presented this case on January 17, right here, right? And this note came from Bank of America recently on February 1st. Actually, they sent it on February 1st, and then they corrected it. They sent another version on February 5th. Nonetheless, this note came out last week, all right? And they say, 2017 pressure stabilized, but macro environment remains tough. Look for clues in Orlando. First positive revision in nearly a year. Now what? If you watch the language in this carefully, you will see how they love the story, they talk about it, but they're reluctant to move the estimates higher. All right. So here, we estimate RBA's growth was 8% in the fourth quarter, which first of all, I think is already too low, because the company already provided a gross transaction value as well as equipment sales, which was in way high double-digit percentage. And they say, we estimate RBA's growth was 8%. We're a big rebound from Q1 to Q3 2017 of minus 11%. Admittedly, we are a bit perplexed by the recovery in November and December, as there is little anecdotal evidence to suggest that the right used equipment backdrop has changed. Okay, so here you go. They're reluctant. They're not moving. They're like, okay, we're surprised by all of this. While RBA is likely through the eye of the storm, We wonder if the recent pickup in lots is with lower value items or requires higher cost. Again, throwing in the darts on the dark, not knowing exactly, instead of just believing on the story, what's coming in front of them with the GTV report coming out every single month. They're questioning. We wonder if this was lower priced items. We wonder if the cost was higher, blah, 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 rather than just believing the data that's right in front of them and say, you know what? This thing has moved. This thing, the growth story is looking better. We have to start raising in a forward earnings estimates. And I think this is precisely why the analyst community is behind the curve. And you could see spark of upgrades and hikes in price targets and the forward earnings estimates after the earnings come out. Now, just to be very, very clear, the earnings will come out on February 21st. Okay, so February 21st is next week on Wednesday. I'll tell you if it's before or after I'll check if it's before or after the market close. But it's coming out on February 21st. But one day before that, there is a massive, massive conference that's taking place, which is going to serve as the first catalyst, which is an Orlando auction that is taking place on February 20th. All right. Even in regarding that, Bank of America says the lot count for Orlando appears strong, but difficult to know if this is due IP no longer hosting its own live auction or a different Again, they have a lot of doubts that basically they're going to be able to do much of a business in this particular conference. How big is this conference? I mentioned this. If you go back to my original notes over here, how big is this conference? I mentioned this right here. Today, RBA announced that from February 19 to 24, it is holding the largest auction in the company's history, spread out on 200 acres in Orlando, Florida. So it's going to be a massive conference, 200 acres, one of the largest in the company's history. That's gonna start the day before earnings, but it's going to continue up to 4 days or 3 days after the earnings come out on February 21st. So the entire period from February 19th up until February 24th, I believe could be positive for the stock because a lot of analysts are going to be attending this particular event. So that means next week, all of next week, from Monday all the way to Saturday, the entire next week, you could see this stock just run. Okay, and especially if the analyst community start to basically catch up to the story, because this utilization or this order growth that we have seen from November and December is too strong, and I don't believe the analyst community has started to move estimate higher. Let me check something here real quick. I was looking at it yesterday, so let me just pull this up on my screen. A spot that I would like to go to. So hold on 1 second. Here you go. This is the kind of I'd like to go to. So here is the consensus estimates. You can see how. Remember what I mentioned, that Q1, Q2, and Q3 of 2017 was negative growth consistently, but then things started to rebound sharply in Q4. You can see how forward estimates have been cut all year long. And then they started to stabilize. All right. So the forward 2018 estimates, for example, we started 2017 at a buck 49. That's the EPS line. And by the end of the year, it was cut down to 97 cents. That's a more than 35 or 40% cut in the forward earnings estimates. And then the growth rebounded sharply, in November and December. So now I expect these lines will start to basically move higher again. All right. And so as those move higher, the forward earnings multiple should move higher, as well as you should get both a valuation expansion as well as the earnings expansion for forward from here. But the point of showing this chart is that the analyst community has not moved yet. They're still sitting behind the curve. All right. That was the one trade that I wanted to point out. The trade is to buy straight. These have moved up a little bit now, but the trade is to buy straight these March 30 calls for $2.35 or less, because that's going to be for the entire next week of that's going to be catalyst rich week.